Okay, let's start because I really want to respect those of you that have joined on time. And thank you once again for joining this session focused on unlocking the secrets of strategic networking. I'll be sharing networking tips and tricks. So, whether you're networking virtually or in person, how you can make an impact and what that can do for your career and personal life as well. So, again, thank you so much for joining this session. I want to thank Danny for her help in organizing the session and inviting me all to speak to you. Um, and as I said, I'll be covering tips and tricks for networking success. I'll be talking for the next 30 or 40 minutes, but I really want this to be interactive. So continue to use the chat functionality and use the Q&A section for any questions that you have that are addressed at the end. Please grab a notepad and pen or your favorite note-taking app if you haven't already as well. So if we go on to the next slide, just to give you an introduction to the network that I run and who I'm speaking on behalf of today as well. It's called the Now You're Talking Network. We are a community and business focused on helping women earn more and be more confident. Very similar mission to what GTA do with Black women in tech, really supporting women throughout their career advancement. And building that network outside of your kind of the organization that you work in. I think it's really important for opportunities and growth to think about where is my network? Is it just people at my organization or just people at previous organizations? And how can I continue to grow my network as well? So if you're interested in what we do around supporting women to earn more and be more confident, we provide job opportunities, knowledge, advice, etc. We have a fortnightly newsletter. Then please check out our website and our Instagram, Twitter, etc. as well. I've been talking for a couple of minutes, but not actually introduced myself. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll introduce myself and who I am. My name is Mary Agbesanwa. I'm founder of the Now You're Talking Network, but by day, I work in fintech and wealth management in growth and sales, which I'm really passionate about the use of technology to drive change in financial services. So if you ever want to talk about fintech and personal finance, happy to talk about that. Have been blogging for a while around careers, so love talking about topics like this related to your personal and professional development. I'm a lecturer part-time at Imperial College Business School in the UK and support a program at Wharton in the US, and also a board trustee. So loads of opportunities in the work that I do to network, to think about building my network. And this links really nicely into topics like personal branding as well. On the slides, you can also see some of the fellow members of the Now You're Talking Network who support with what we do and the events we run and our content as well, all unified about helping women earn more and be more confident, as I said. So again, do check us out if you're interested. So, diving into today's content, all around networking tips and tricks, I thought I would kind of set the scene and understand why you might have joined this webinar today. It is your lunchtime. You could have been doing a multitude of different things, but maybe these are some reasons that you decided to join. So, hopefully, at least one of these, or maybe all of them, apply to you. So, you recognize networking is vital to career success. So, throughout your career already, you've seen how networking has helped people and you want to emulate that as well. You know that effective networking is a rare and valuable skill. I'm sure we can all think of individuals that we know that are just great networkers. If you need, whether it's a plumber or you need someone who can fix a light bulb in your house, or you need someone who's really good at Excel, or someone who just seems to know loads of people within technology. We can all think of those great connectors, and you're really thinking about how you can become more effective with your networking. You might be committed to expanding your personal or professional network. So you might recognize there are particular gaps. as I said at the start, you might think, oh, actually, my network just exists within my organization, or actually, my network just exists with people my own age, and I need to think about people more senior than me. Or maybe you're thinking, actually, I'm kind of middle to senior in my career, and I actually need to start thinking about people who are more junior than me. How can I start to understand the trends that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are thinking about? So you know that maybe there's kind of a gap in your network. And lastly, you want to know the best resources, communities, and books available to help you network. Honestly, sometimes the word networking for people can be a bit of an ick. So some of you might be joining just to really try and challenge yourself around that. And maybe you've made 2024 your year to commit to actively networking, actively going to events, virtual and in person. So if all of these statements apply to you, or if just one of them, hello and welcome to this session. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it. But overall, people often complicate networking, but I truly believe it's just about building relationships. And I'll be sharing some tips about how you can do that. So just to run through very quickly what we'll cover in today's session, as I said, I'll be talking for the next 20, 30 minutes or so. We'll go through what is networking, doing a few exercises where I really want to hear from all of you in the chats. We'll talk about why networking is important. I'll go into some top networking tips. I'll share some tools and resources at the end, and then we'll dive into the Q&A and close as well. So we love quotes at the Now You're Talking Network. And I thought I'd start with this quote from Keith Ferrazzi, who's an American author and entrepreneur. And I really love this quote, and I think it's perfect to set the scene for what we're talking about today. And the quote says, "The currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity." So just want you to all think about that for a moment. And I think it's such a beautiful quote, because when we think about networking, and particularly networking in today's day and age, people can think of something very transactional, very much, I need to get this from someone, I need a mentor, I need this. But actually, networking, as I said at the start, is really about relationship building. And that has to, of course, be about a bit of give, a bit of take. And we all know how icky it is when you're networking with someone and you can just tell they want to take something for you. They just want to take, and they don't want to give anything. And they might not even be doing it intentionally. But when we're thinking about strategically networking, we have to think about what are we there to give, as well as how can we understand what might be nice to take from someone as well. So all in all, this quote is to remind us it's not just about being a taker when it comes to networking, it's also about being a giver as well. So really keen to hear your thoughts in the chat, but how do you feel about networking? And why do you think it's important? Feel free to share in the chat. I've kind of set the scene about why I think it's important and what it is. What are your thoughts? Maybe as I've been talking for the past couple of minutes, those feelings are already in your stomach around, how do I, this is, networking is a bit icky, or I'm a bit nervous about it. What are your thoughts? Perfect. Someone says to learn and to share knowledge. Any other thoughts on what networking is about? Learning, exactly. Sharing. Perfect. Exactly. That exchange of information, two-sided. Some people say they enjoy networking as well. Exactly. But just don't know how to approach it sometimes. Brilliant insights. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. If we go on to the next slide, exactly. So what networking is, as I said, it's just, here is the actual definition, is the action of socially developing professional relationships in order to inform one another on things that are of interest to you. So again, exactly as people have said in the chat, is about that exchange, it's about getting to know people, it's about understanding their background, what their intentions are. And so whether you're real life networking or virtual networking, ideally you want to have a strategy. You should be intentional. So that means you should be clear and focused and have a reason for being at that place or engaging with that person. and you want to be engaging. You want to be someone that is interesting, and interested in what people are saying as well. So I hope I can convince you all from the next couple of slides and the tips I'll share today that networking is vital. It's not optional. It's something we're always going to have to be doing. So whether some people sometimes think I need to start networking because I need a new job, or I need to start networking because I need to get a book deal, or I need to start networking because I want to get this partnership. Actually, networking is something, whether you realize it or not, you're doing consistently. So it makes sense to be very strategic with how you do it as well. So, exactly as I've said, and as you have all said in the chat as well, networking is building relationships, it's getting to know people on a deeper level. And honestly, I believe it's the free life cheat code. It is the way that you can open doors that weren't open to you already. It's the way you can find out about partnerships. It's the way you can find out about opportunities. Maybe some of you found out about this webinar through networking. A friend said to you, oh, did you know about this webinar? Here is the link. Or maybe you were at another event and someone said to you, what about this event? So again, I love networking, as someone else has said in the chat, for the ability to meet interesting people, to advance your career, to advance your personal life, to get recommendations. And once you start to have that kind of abundance mindset with networking, honestly, you won't be afraid of it. You'll just see it's an lovely and amazing opportunity that we get as a part of life as well. So I thought I'd share a little bit of theory about why we should network. And actually, the course I teach at Wharton Business School in the US is focused on executive presence and leadership. And we talk about a lot of research done into strong and weak ties. And I'll give you a really short summary here that is really useful. So if you're interested, do check out the sociologist Mark Granovetter, who's done a lot of research on strong and weak ties. But essentially, strong ties, as the diagram shows, are people you know really well. So think about your first LinkedIn connections, and maybe even a subset of those, because you might not know everyone that you're connected to on LinkedIn. But people who you know very well, you've met them before, you've engaged with them, you can call them, you're probably connected on multiple social media platforms. There's a lot of research that this says that actually, this is up to about 150 people that you can have strong ties with. It's called Dunbar's number. And research shows that beyond that, actually, some of those have to be weak ties, because as humans, we can only manage kind of up to 150 strong ties. As opposed to that, there are weak ties. So people you know, but you don't know them very well. You might not know where they live, but you might know just their job title. You might know them as a friend of a friend, essentially. Think of those kind of second LinkedIn connections. And they're relationships that do not require much intention, as opposed to your strong ties where they're kind of actively managed and you're constantly meeting up with them, going for dinner, going to events, etc. as well. But essentially, what's interesting about networking theory is that it shows that a lot of the time, opportunities and information can come from your weak ties, and people don't realize this. Your weak ties are valuable because they offer a different point of view. They can give you insights. A lot of the time, job opportunities might come from your weak ties, from someone who knows you through someone else. And actually, left to our own devices, we can invest too much time into just strong ties. We can say, actually, I just want to have this close circle of people who know me. And actually, we can have that mentality of birds of a feather flock together. You're leaning towards your homophily, which means that you're leaning towards people who either act like you or look like you. And actually, how often are you intentional about building out your network, thinking about gaining more weak ties who I said will provide opportunities, information, help you build your personal brand as well. And over time, some of these weak ties can, of course, under the right conditions, become strong ties as well. So if we go on to the next slide, hopefully that's given you a good insight into some of the theory behind networking and why it's important. I'm really keen to know, when was the last time you networked? So do share in the chat Was it yesterday? Have you not intentionally networked for a while? Really keen to hear your thoughts. This is not a trick question. Christelle says yesterday. Haley says Monday. Emma says today. Brilliant. So this is honestly not a trick question. Some people are saying they haven't done it in a while. Someone said a few months ago, a couple months ago, yesterday, Tuesday. This isn't a trick question. I think this is honestly about getting you to be in that mindset of thinking, how often am I actively thinking about networking? Now, how often am I putting myself in opportunities to meet new people? Sometimes, as I said, we can default to, I only want to be with my strong ties, the people I know, the people I work with. And otherwise, I don't need to meet new people. I'm kind of at my max. But as I've said, there are so many opportunities you can get from actively networking and being intentional. So I'm loving the reflections from people in the chat around when the last time it was they actively started thinking about networking or actually networked. If we go on to the next slide. So in-person networking, now that post-pandemic we can go back out, it's really important to be back out there in-person networking, and hopefully I can give you a couple of reasons why. Firstly, it's about mustering up the courage and the confidence to talk to people face to face. I know for myself that kind of my social battery is a lot shorter post-pandemic. It is really hard to be in a big room of people and network uh, and get to know them. And I will share some really great networking questions towards the end of this webinar, so do stick around for that. But yeah, how can you muster up that courage and confidence? How can you remain true to yourself? How do you know how you want to show up to other people? How will you introduce yourself? Do you have your short elevator pitch? Have you actually thought intentionally about why you signed up to that event? Or did you just see a diary invite and accept yes? Or did you just see something on Eventbrite and just click yes and didn't think about it? How can you understand how you're perceived by others? So do you come across as friendly and welcoming? Do you go into a room and do you smile? Or do you just kind of feel so nervous you go straight to hanging up your coat, fiddling with your coat and your bags and going straight to the food and drinks, which isn't bad, but that can be our default response. How can you muster up that confidence again to go straight into the room, to find maybe two people, because that's always good to find two people you can easily join a conversation. And remembering it's okay to say hello first. If you see someone at a networking event that is looking shy and nervous, why don't you say hello to them? Carpe diem, seize the day, seize the opportunity to say hello to that person and think they're probably feeling similar to how you are. They might be on their own as well at this event. And how can you start a conversation with them? And as I said, take the first step if need be. That can be really powerful. Perfect. So let's actually go into some tips around what it takes to be a successful networker. We've set the scene around what networking is, why it's important. Um, but what does it actually take to be a successful networker? And I wanted to split it into these four areas. So firstly, a successful networker embraces it, as I just said on the previous slide. From the moment they arrive, they are impactful. You meet someone and you might not be able to recall what they say, but you remember how they said it. You remember how they made you feel. And you have that sense of, this is someone I want in my circle. This is someone that is positive, is smiling, is engaging, and isn't just taking from me, but is willing to share as well. They are interesting. So a successful networker is charismatic and clear. They ask good questions and they don't dominate the conversation just with their insights as well. And as I'm sharing these, if any of them are resonating with you around things that you know you need to work on, feel free to share in the chat. A successful networker is always prepared. I personally think whenever you sign up to a networking event, you need to spend at least half the time of the event preparing for the event. So if you're going to a 3-hour event in an evening, spend at least an hour and a half preparing for that event, understanding why did you sign up? What are you going to take from that event? Who are the speakers? Who is the organization hosting the event? What future events will they have? What do I want to get out of this event? What do I need to do after the event? It sounds like a lot of work, but honestly, this is what it takes to be an intentional and strategic networker, and to get the most out of your time as well. Our time is valuable and precious. So a successful networker does things like bringing along business cards or having their LinkedIn ready. Have you ever networked with someone and they say, oh, actually, sorry, I don't have LinkedIn, or oh, my LinkedIn only has 10 connections. I haven't updated it in a while. It does kind of dampen your confidence. You feel like, okay, is this person not prepared, or do they not care, or why are they here? Don't be that person. Bring a notepad, bring your favorite note-taking app on your phone. As I said, research the speakers, understand what insights you want to hear from them. How many of you before joining this session thought, what are the questions that I want to ask Mary? Honestly, it's really that simple. You really just have to think about those things. And if it's a conference, again, study the conference, understand what rooms you want to be in, understand what sessions you have to go to, understand when, if you want to take a break, you can step outside because you're not as interested in those sessions. And I can see some reflections in the chat saying, definitely need to do more around being prepared for events. And lastly, they follow up. They connect with people during the event, post the event, and they engage with them via social media on a regular basis. So the follow up is so important, particularly because most people don't do it. How often do you engage with someone or network with someone at an event? You have a great connection and then you never speak to them ever again. Isn't that such a shame? Particularly if you have aligned interests and work in a similar sphere. How can I encourage you to actively cultivate that, to follow up, to reach out to them? Really important to do that. To connect with them on LinkedIn, and then maybe a month later say, oh, I saw this job opportunity that you mentioned, you're looking for a new role, and share it with them. Wouldn't they love that? I know that when people have done that for me, it's been really helpful. And again, it makes you look good. It showcases you've got great networking skills. So let's go into kind of my top tips for thinking about networking, and we're going to dive deep into each of these 5 areas. So the first area is around updating your digital presence. I'm a big fan of using digital tools to help you build your personal brand, and it enables you to be good at digital networking. And particularly when I talk about your digital presence, primarily I'm thinking about LinkedIn. So ideally, you want to be online sharing about recent promotions, maybe a job role change, and keeping up to date on your profile as well. Like having, as you can see on the slide, a picture of you that looks like you, not from 10 years ago, not from 15 years ago. Your name clearly, maybe the pronunciation of your name, a header image that showcases your personality or your interests. Having your job history up to date, again, really important and powerful as well. And checking your digital presence on a regular basis to make sure, because whether you like it or not, in this hybrid, in this digital first world that we live in, people are searching you, people are putting your name into Google, people are putting your name into LinkedIn, and you want what they see to be an accurate representation of who you are today. So if we click next to see some further tips, when we're thinking about your digital presence, it's about updating your social media profiles on a regular basis to keep front of mind for your existing network, and also for new networks as well. So maybe create a personal website. I have a personal website. I really love to have a personal website to keep a record of my speaking gigs, accolades that I've got so far in my career, and just to have a central place to document that I can design in a way that I like. And I found that ever since I created my personal website, it gets hundreds of visits a week. I can share my successes and initiatives that I'm working on, and it can really help boost my profile. And again, I can design it much more customized to how I want it to look compared to something like LinkedIn. And if you're in a career like maybe you're a software engineer or you're UX designer, having a personal website can also be a way to showcase your skills as well. So posting about your achievements to keep your network up to date, again, really important. Inspire others, share what you're working on. Did you go to an event? Did you learn something? Showcase what you're interested in. Maybe some of you will take that as a lesson to share about this workshop and say, I dedicated 1 hour of my lunchtime to learn from Mary, and these are the top tips that I got from the session. Share your interests and ideas. People want to know about you. They want to know you beyond your job title. It's great that you're a lawyer. It's great that you're a software engineer. But what else? You're not just a vanilla lawyer or vanilla software engineer. Make your profile a bit more interesting. What do you love to do? What are your interests as well? Brilliant. And I'm seeing some questions come in. I will get to those at the end. Please add them to Q&A section, but I'll remember them if they're not in the chat as well. So let's go to the next top tip when we're thinking about networking. And the next tip is to intentionally build new connections. I feel like I've been kind of hammering this point home throughout the webinar so far, not just turning up for the sake of it, intentionally thinking about why am I here and why am I thinking about building new connections at this stage. So when was the last time, as I've said, did you actively go out to meet new people? And my top tip when we're thinking about intentionally building new connections is utilizing people in your existing network that I would call connectors. Connectors are people in your network who seem to know everyone. Like I said, the people that know the best plumbers, the best handymen or handywomen, they know the best people at Excel, they know the best events to go to. I'm sure if we all take a minute and think about our networks, we know someone who is a connector. And so how often do you go to those people and say, actually, I'm looking for this kind of help. How can you help me? And you know, those connectors, they get joy from doing that. They get joy from sharing opportunities and insights with others. So do reach out to those individuals. These people are naturally kind of sociable and they can help you build networks and connect with people as well. So just to break down this area into more top tips, if you click next, please. How you can do this. Firstly, using networking apps. It might be Clubhouse if you still want to use that app. It might be LinkedIn. It might be using things like I've forgotten the name of it, but I know it's on the slides. Tools that enable you to connect with people and to meet people. Coming to webinars like this, sharing your LinkedIn handle in the chat so people can connect with you. Really important tips like that. Actively showing up and networking with people. What's good about networking virtually or in person is if you're networking with people on a webinar like this, let's say, you know the people already have some level of commonality with you. They're already a kind of person that would spend 1 hour of their lunch break to join a webinar about networking. You already have something in common, so utilize that. Intentionally build your network beyond your workplace. As I said, a lot of people can get stuck in thinking about just their workplace, maybe even just their industry. How often are you going to events that are outside of your industry or outside of your workplace? Because, as I said, for future job opportunities, for future opportunities, these are where your kind of wider network, your weaker ties really come into play. For me, the board role that I sit on, the charity board that I sit on, that came through my personal brand and through my network. The lecturing opportunities that I have, again, those came through my personal brand and my kind of weak ties network. Really important to develop that. And lastly, prepare a good question to ask when you meet people. Again, I'll share some examples very soon, but don't just say, how are you? Don't just kind of go up to people and not say anything. Probe a bit deeper. Ask, what are you passionate about? What new skills are you trying to pick up? Or how are you thinking about your current career? Are you thinking about moving roles? What is your biggest challenge at the moment? What do you enjoy doing most? Those kind of things. I also like to ask, like in the first kind of quarter of the year, people are still in that kind of reflective mode. They're thinking about what they want to achieve. Just ask people, what are your biggest goals for 2024? You tend to hear amazing stories about people's personal and professional lives. The third tip, so if we go on to the next slide, is focus on engaging and contributing online. It's not just enough to be on these platforms, but how often are you engaging with them? And particularly, I saw a comment from someone that says they're more of an introvert, they're less keen on kind of going out there to big events. I believe that the digital landscape is the biggest democratizer and then is perfect for introverts. Previously, you would have to go to these events in person and be invited, but actually, the digital landscape means that you can be an introvert and you can create your own personal brand and not exhaust yourself in a way that would be very draining to you. So, if you're less keen on content creation yourself, social media can be used to engage with other people's content. So if we go to look at the tips for this section, start off by just engaging with other people's content, sharing it, liking, tagging other people that might be interested. All very simple ways to engage online and still look like you're showing up. Really important. When was the last time that you spent time on LinkedIn? You liked other people's content, you shared it, you tagged other people that might be interested in it as well. I try and do this for at least 30 minutes every week, purely on the platform, engaging with people, sharing, liking, tagging. And again, it allows people to see me as the connector. It allows people to see me as well networked and knowledgeable about my sphere of learning. Sign up to newsletters. Be aware of the latest news. People always love people that can share information and knowledge with them. Not any just random news, but news that is targeted and relevant to your kind of area or things that you're passionate about as well. I personally love facts and figures. So whenever I read news articles or newsletters with interesting facts and figures, I take a note of them and I can use them in conversation. For instance, one of my favorite facts and figures, even though it's a crazy statistics, is that if women invested at the same rate as men, there would be an extra $3.2 trillion invested by private individuals around the world, which is insane. And I love that statistic because it speaks to what I'm passionate about, which is personal finance and wealth management and the gender pay and the gender wealth gap. Do you have a similar facts and figure in your realm that you can utilize? As I've said, collaborating with others, if you're less keen on creating content yourself, liking and engaging with other people's content, maybe doing a joint blog post with someone or joint webinar, that kind of thing, putting yourself out there, using other people to keep you accountable. And then lastly, communities. I'd like to think everyone on this call is pro community because you're joining a session like this. You're probably part of the uh, different kinds of communities in technology. You're probably part of the Global Tech Advocates community joining this session. How can you actively be someone that joins communities and engages in them? Don't just be a lurker on these platforms. Actually join and contribute and share. I think that can really help. Communities like the one I run, the Now You're Talking Network, really great to contribute and share to them as well. If we go on to the fourth tip, this is about cultivating existing relationships. And I really wanted to include this because oftentimes when you go to networking webinars, people forget about your existing relationships. They're just so focused on more and more and more. And sometimes I find that people are obsessed with how many LinkedIn connections they have. Oh, do I have 500 connections? Do I have 1,000 connections? I just need more. It becomes almost like a Pokemon game. And actually, it's always about the value of your connections. Don't just collect for the sake of collecting. Cultivate the existing relationships that you have. And particularly now, like I for myself have a remote role, there aren't as many water cooler conversations that I can have. There aren't as many kind of casual lunchtime conversations. So how do I actively go about kind of engaging with people, meeting people, utilizing opportunities when I can meet them in person, but also utilizing opportunities where I could just have to engage with them virtually? So some examples of that include, yes, exactly, scheduling 15 minutes check-ins and chats. It sounds crazy. Some of you might be thinking, what can you achieve in 15 minutes? But I really think it can be powerful. Just putting 15 minutes in the diary with someone, you can set it up so that you talk through what you're focusing on, how things are going for you. They focus on that, and then you end with any asks or offers from both of you, anything that you want to ask the other person for or anything you want to offer them and vice versa. And I think 15 minutes is great because everyone is kind of time poor at the moment. So quick check-ins work really, really great. And if you can make it half an hour, make it half an hour. What I'm trying to say, it doesn't have to be an hour, it doesn't have to be 2 hours, it doesn't have to be at lunchtime, it doesn't have to be a whole evening. As I've said previously, sharing articles, sharing reports, sharing even events. How many of you signed up to this webinar and didn't share it with someone else? Because if you did that, you missed out on a networking opportunity. You missed out on reaching out to someone that you know wants to prioritize networking 2024 and sharing it with them. And I would strongly encourage you to do that for future events as well. So, and maybe if you've missed the opportunity to share it with them, share your notes with them. Say, I attended this great webinar and these are some notes on networking and this is what I'm going to do about it. Wouldn't you love that if someone did that for you, if you knew that networking was a focus for you? Ask people how they're doing and really listen, particularly in the UK and maybe in other countries as well. People ask, how are you? How was your weekend? And before you know it, they're straight into the detail of other things. It's like just a passing question, a passing comment. But how often are you asking those questions, but truly listening to what people are saying? You'll often start to hear deeper things that they're telling you. Maybe they're not completely okay. Maybe, especially in the UK, I'm fine is like such a default response for a lot of people. My weekend was fine, but that doesn't tell you anything. Actually, ask them, what did you get up to? How did you spend your Sunday? Just probe and show interest in people. That can be a great way to signify that you're open as a networker as well. And lastly, frame the conversation. I am so passionate about this point. So often, people reach out to people to network or to cultivate an existing relationship, but they don't tell them what they want. And the reason why people do that is because they think that if you tell them that you're looking for a new job, or if you tell them that you're looking for something, it will scare people and that they will not say yes to meeting you. But actually framing the conversation and telling people what you want makes it more likely that they'll say yes. So what I mean by framing the conversation is when you reach out to someone, say, hi Mary, how are you doing? I attended your webinar a couple of weeks ago. I'd love to grab 30 minutes to talk about XYZ. I'm much more likely to say yes to that than if someone just says, hi, Mary, do you have 30 minutes? I'm thinking, I don't even know what you want to speak about. I don't even know why I should prioritize this. And you haven't shown me that you've shown up in some way. You're, again, just being a taker. So, how can we start to frame our conversations when we're thinking about cultivating relationships? And the last tip before we go into the Q&A, if we go on to the next slide, is focus on attending a selection of events. Again, I'm really calling out all of the kind of things that people might have as pitfalls in networking today. This is the final tip. And given you are in attendance today, like I said, you're likely good at going to networking events, whether virtual or in person. But I think it's important to attend a selection of events. Don't just have a kind of spray approach. I'm going to sign up to everything. I'm going to go to everything. But again, like I said, if you're spending at least half the time preparing than you would to go to the event, you shouldn't go to everything. Actually ask yourself, why am I going to this event? What am I going to get out of it? Do I likely know everything that they're going to share at this event anyway? And if the answer to some of those questions is I probably am not going to gain that much. Maybe it would be better for you to relax, to take that evening off, to sleep, to focus on your own side projects or to focus on your day job. Really good to ask ourselves those kind of questions. So the key points under this section are, firstly, documenting your learning. So as I said, have a notepad and a pen to take notes. Use your favorite note-taking app. Some people like Notion, some people like the Notes app on their phone. I like a quick Google Doc sometimes as well. Also, perfecting your elevator pitch slash bio. How will you introduce yourself? There's nothing worse actually than people who introduce themselves and it's confusing. They're telling you they're a controller of this function. They're using words that unless you work in that team, you don't even know what that means. So actually, how do you refine your elevator pitch so that a layperson, that a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old can understand what you do in a very simple way? And if someone is interested, you can expand further. Personally, I like to actually have a Google document that I update on a regular basis of my elevator pitch. And that's in 100 words, that's in 250 words, that's in 500 words. And that's not because I memorize that every time I go to a networking event, but by having it there, I can send it to people when they need it for kind of speaking gigs, but also the more I kind of review it, the more it starts to embed in my mind. And honestly, every single time I speak at an event, you will notice that I introduce myself in pretty much the same way. And that is intentional. And you can do the same at events you go to as well. Select the events you want to go to. So again, this whole section is about thinking about wisely the selective events that you want to go to. Before you sign up, ask yourself, what exactly do I want to gain from this? Who exactly do I want to meet? Sometimes there's just a great speaker that you love that you need to hear. That's fine. But again, just check in with yourself. And lastly, introduce yourself in large Zoom meetings or large webinars like this. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to share your LinkedIn handle, to introduce yourself, to say what you're about can be really important. So, in summary, here are the 5 tips that I've shared in terms of networking success. If we go on to the next slide, these are all the areas that I've covered: updating your digital presence, intentionally building new connections, engaging and contributing online, cultivating existing relationships, and attending a selection of virtual or in-person events. Being selective, being intentional is throughout all of that as well. So if we go on to the next slide, here are some great networking questions I promised you all. If you stay towards the end, I would share with you. Again, going on beyond just how are you, or the basic kind of questions. Ask people more interesting questions. Ask them about recent achievements or professional achievements. Ask them about how they got into the world they have now. Ask them what they plan to do for Christmas. Ask them when was the last holiday and where did they go. That usually gets people quite animated. Ask them if they have any advice for you at the event or in your career. Again, this is a slide you should take a picture of, particularly if you're nervous when you go to events and you don't know how to navigate the room or ask people questions. So if we go on to the next slide. And lastly, I wanted to share some tools and resources for networking. At the Now You're Talking Network, we love to have practical workshops and content. And I love to always end workshops with these kind of practical tools and resources. So on the top left, you can see some books and some podcasts that I really love that are in relation to public speaking and putting yourself out there. Really great resources, some communities on the top right hand side, like the Now Talking Network, that allow you to connect with people, some networking platforms like LinkedIn. Lunch Club, that was the app I couldn't remember. Lunch Club is great, particularly for introverts. If you want to engage with people one-to-one, the site uses AI to match you with people in any jurisdiction that you want that have similar interests. And that can be nicer for people that don't find kind of going to big networking events overwhelming. And then again, when you're thinking about networking, you have to be organized, you have to be productive, you need to be able to manage your time. So using organizational tools to help you do that as well. If we go on to the next slide. So just as I wrap up, before we dive into the Q&A, just wanted to share our next Now You're Talking Network event with Skyscanner. It's a Women in Tech showcase. So we'll be having an evening event in London. Sorry for everyone who's abroad. And we will be having a range of different kind of TED Talk style talks from women in technology, sharing on different topics that they're passionate about. We'll have food, we'll have drinks. So today, I've been talking about networking tips and tricks. I'm giving you an example here and an opportunity for you to enact this, to do it in person if you can join us. And yeah, please scan the QR code on the slide and you can join us for this session. If you go on to the next slide, please. Perfect. Now time for the Q&A. Any questions based on what I've shared? Thank you for joining me. I know I've been talking for a while, but hopefully you're feeling a lot more confident about networking and happy to take any of your questions.